question is this: how will you inspire voters, especially the young, to cast their vote and to use it effectively? And Anne is our first speaker on this one.
Women died to gain the vote. Before 1918, no women were allowed to vote in parliamentary elections. In 1918, women over 30 were allowed to vote. In 1928, all women over 21 were allowed to vote. It is a precious privilege, which was hard won, and it is for that reason that I am passionate about getting everyone, and especially the young, to vote. The Liberal Democrats want to give 16-year-olds the vote, to try to encourage an interest in voting at a younger age, thereby starting a habit which will hopefully last a lifetime. Only the Tories are opposed to giving 16-year-olds the vote. UKIP as well, okay. I was asked by a local secondary school to take part in a BBC Schools election project to encourage young people to take an interest in politics. And I was interviewed by a fourth-year boy who wanted to know how Liberal Democrat policies would affect the young. He wanted to know whether Liberal Democrats were in favour of lowering the voting age to 16. And he was already concerned about housing policy. When I meet young people whilst out canvassing, I point out to them that by exercising your right to vote, you gain a stake in society. And politicians pay attention to groups who regularly vote, such as pensioners, and target policies at them, particularly at election times. Pensioners have been rewarded with such policies as a triple lock on pensions. In 2010, only 44% of young people aged 18 to 24 voted in the general election, whereas 61% of people aged 65 and over voted. If young people do not vote in sufficient numbers on policies which matter to them, politicians will ignore their needs and focus on the groups of voters who do. Russell Brand has done a great disservice to the young by suggesting that voting is a waste of time and changes nothing. I would respectfully suggest that Lisa McKenzie's Class 4 is similarly misguided. I have taught in this constituency for many years, and I hope to inspire young people to get involved in politics. Also, as a female candidate, I hope I am sending a message that more women should get involved in politics. It cannot be right that in 2015, less than a quarter of our MPs are women. Thank you.
Right, well, I'm sure that those young people that you speak to are really inspired when you tell them why they should vote. And I think rather than worry about, what is wrong with the public, why are they voting, why aren't young people interested in politics, I think what we need to do is look at the politicians and let's ask what is wrong with them. Because people do not want to vote for them. This really is not about people not voting. This really is about people being absolutely bored to death and not listening and not believing any of these mainstream politicians. The Lib Dems, you're going to get wiped out. Because you have totally, you have reneged on promises, you have got in bed with the Tories, people, you're actually irrelevant. So, I really don't think that we need to be asking what about young people. I think we need to be asking about what about the people that stand themselves up to be voted for. They don't inspire me, and that is the reason why I've stood. I don't really want to be an MP, but I just think there needs to be a different conversation. There needs to be a new conversation in politics, rather than this same old tat that keeps coming out all the time. Tinker here, tinker there, let's do do a little bit of this, but really we're not going to change anything. What we're going to do is keep it the same. We're always going to keep it the same so we can look after each other. And that is why people are not voting, because they know it makes no real difference. I don't think Russell Brand actually has done a disservice at all. I think what he's done is opened up a discussion that has needed to be open for a long time. And that's why I'm standing. So we can start to talk about this. And we can say what is wrong with our politics, what is wrong with our democracy. Because there is something wrong with it. Our MPs do not represent us. They don't look like us, they don't speak like us, they don't live like us. And that is the problem with our democracy. So that is why I stood, you know, for good or for ill, but that's why I'm here. I'm really not here to start lecturing people whether or not they should or should not vote. Voting is not a privilege. It's a right that people won. And actually, sometimes people speak louder when they say nothing at all. And when they don't vote, they are speaking very loudly. And they are saying, rather than they are not interested, is that they're just not interested in you.
It's very nice to follow that up. So I've been door knocking about 18 months, and I didn't do it before because I have a job and family, and I'm not a career politician. So when you knock on people's doors and you talk to them about voting, the first thing they say is exactly that. They're all the same, they all look the same, they all sound the same, there's no point. When I look at these, I do feel like I look into a mirror. But it's not true. If only. But it does go to that core of we're all just trying to sell, politicians are trying to sell something. And it has been lost. It used to be a time of change where people stood tall and inspired people, and I do think that's been lost. And I'll disagree with most people on policies on this floor, but what I will say is they all have very different jobs. They all have a life outside of politics, and they've come to this because they care. They have a breadth of experience, and that's respectable. And I do think we need more politicians who get involved in this, who are career politicians, who haven't gone to the same universities, and haven't done the same types of jobs, and decided to get into this because they care. We talk particularly about young people. I think that they're one of the best ways to keep politicians honest and to keep bugging us. And I think the best way to do that is to give them the vote from 16 and 17, because they keep chasing us and they keep hounding us and they have the most energy. And when it comes to how to use it effectively, I do genuinely believe at its best, and I think when it started, politics was about inspiring and causing change. Real, honest change. And I accept that sometimes saying nothing is sometimes a more powerful message. But in this time, with this type of government, where there is such a stark contrast of choices of how a country will prevail, it is time for people to say, actually, I want the ideas of aspiration. I want my kids to do better than I did. I want to know that if something goes wrong with me or my family or my loved ones, I have a free at the point of use, world-class NHS to support me. And so for this election, more so than others, and which is why we've got more candidates running from different parties, and in fact more parties running, this is one of the most vital times for us to actually exercise our vote and say to the political classes, and I'm not denying that they're exist, actually. I do think that many parties, when more leadership say the same kind of things, for us to come up and say, this is not good enough anymore, we need to change this. Thank you.
Question. Inspire. How to inspire children who can think and who are therefore extremely disenchanted with the political class that has let them down, that has let down the whole country. I think the legacy parties who have spoken should have started off with an apology to you, to the country, and especially to the young people. It's all about young people. They are the future. But of course they didn't, because they don't see it that way. In fact, I have to say the anarchist party is the one that makes the most sense. I mean, it is, of the other speakers, it's simply true. They recognize what the issues are, and currently we have anarchy in this country. We have anarchy. Well, I can tell you what my doorstep experience is, since Bilal chose to share his with you. Mine is that 60% of people say they're going to vote for UKIP. And that is going to be changed, I can tell you that, because I'm not a career politician. Part of the reason I'm here is that I'm not one of them. by having me, you'll be denying them the chance to screw it up yet again. Yet again. Bilal, great guy though you are, it requires amnesia to be able to take you seriously, because your party has single-handedly destroyed the country, condemned not just our children, our grandchildren, but 5 more generations into abject poverty. Mathematics is inescapable here. The debt is £1.5 trillion. The accrual, which is something which those of you who know about business and accountancy will understand, is probably another £2.5 trillion. No one knows how much it is. The total is about £4 trillion. £4 trillion is an incredible amount of money. The amount of interest we are paying on it is equivalent to millions of pounds every hour. We can't afford it. It can't be afforded. Young people to be inspired requires them right now, requires them to make a leap of faith that we're going to get rid of this political class, the discredited legacy parties of the past. You couldn't put a cigarette paper between them. I'm a non-smoker, but this is like quite apparent. I mean, it's interchangeable. Half of them could change the badges around, and it wouldn't make any difference. I'm working class myself. I've worked since I was 12 years old. I've run my own businesses, first teaching, because I love inspiring people. That's what gets me going. Seeing a love of the subject, be it physics or mathematics or English for that, would be good. Thank you, sir. I have been given a powerful voice, though. A microphone is not necessary, and I speak to you from the heart, which speaks stronger than any electronic gadget. And on that, I speak as a physicist. Now, it's probably best to say I'm here because I'm not them, and because I don't want them to be there, and they can't be there while I'm here. How about that?
Thanks, Chair. Young people will be inspired to vote and participate in politics when they are given enthusiasm and inspiration to do so. And I think nothing gives the lie that people are apolitical more than the example of the movement that took place around the independence referendum in Scotland some time ago. The prospect of a fight to end the establishment party's austerity agenda mobilised the biggest turnout of young people and working class particularly to vote since the right to vote itself was won. A great example of when roused and motivated by a prospect of a poverty-free future, hope will triumph over fear and the cynicism bred by politicians on the make and in the pockets of the rich and the powerful. If elected, alone amongst the candidates on this platform this evening, I stand as a workers' MP on a workers' wage and will take only my normal wage. Only the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition supports the right of constituents to recall MPs with immediate effect and remove them where they vote against their constituents' wishes and for cuts, and not wait for another 5 years. Only Tusk has the policies that will inspire young voters. We call for the scrapping of student fees, for free education as a right for all. No to the academies and no to free schools. Why should hedge funds exploit and go on the make out of our children's education future? I will campaign with teachers, with their trade unions and students for good, free education for all, under democratic local authority control and for student grants, not fees. Thank you.
Lower the voting age, but if we're not engaged as a nation, then it won't make any difference. And if we feel betrayed by the cuts that have happened, it will make even less difference. We already are, in the Green Party, inspiring young voters. Young people are joining us in great numbers. We have the largest youth wing of any party. They're with us locally leafleting. They were leafleting with us on Saturday and all during the week. We are the only party addressing the long-term issues of climate change that affect our young people's future. Climate change is a reality now and will be catastrophic in 30 years, affecting massive numbers all over the world. If I was 18 and I'm not, I would be wanting to do something about that. But we're addressing short-term issues too. We would bring back the education maintenance allowance. We would not have tuition fees. We would reverse the cuts in youth services. Unpaid full-time internships would have a limit of 4 weeks. And these are promises that you can trust. Our representative in Parliament has fought the education cuts all the way in the last 5 years. We haven't let you down by betraying you over the NHS. We haven't voted for pernicious cuts to the lives of disabled people. Our structure is attractive. You dictate the future of the party, you make the policy. Other politicians produce policies that suit their core voters. These core voters are typically older. You can make policy, and we've seen through Caroline how that policy can be carried out in Parliament. To have a chance to change government priorities, you need to vote. And plainly, that's a vote for the Green Party.